Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome yet again to another episode of Lunch Guide. My name is Chef Andy, your usual host, and today I've got something really interesting for you all. For most of you who've been watching our previous episodes this particular season, as we mentioned even in the beginning, we are working on some very easy, nutritious and budget-friendly meals that will suit your lunch boxes for you and your family. And on this particular episode, we are going to be making something in that same respect. We're going to be working on some very simple meatballs. We're going to be serving that with some spaghetti, and I'm also going to show you how to just make a very simple lunchbox accompaniment, which will just be tomato wedges. So without further ado, I'm going to start by introducing my ingredients to my right. So right from the front, I've got some lean beef mince, I've got 2 whole tomatoes, I've got also some homemade bolognese sauce, I've got some spaghetti, some spring onions, a bit of olive oil, salt and pepper for seasoning. I've also got some breadcrumbs and some flour, which will aid me in making some meatballs together with the egg. I also have 2 onions and some minced garlic to just basically bring the flavors together. So we're gonna take a short break, and when we come back, we're gonna dive right in. See you after the short break. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. For those of you who are just catching up with us, we're about to start off on a very beautiful dish. I'm going to be showing you how to make some meatballs. And before we start that off, I'm going to start off by heating up a pan, and I'm just going to explain to you as we continue. So one of my particular best kept secrets of making a good meatball mixture is always cooking my condiments. So I'm just going to start off by chopping some of the onions. I'm just going to first of all cut those in half and peel. So one particular technique that I learned over my many travels, every time you actually make meatballs and you cook the mixture before folding into your meat and finally making them into balls, it actually gives it a kick right on the inside, and what happens is every time you bite into the meatball, it actually feels like it actually got cooked twice, or it's got 2 different characteristics to it. So I'm just going to show you my very simple technique on how to achieve that. And for that, it's a very simple beginning. We're just going to start off by frying some onions and some garlic and some spring onion as well. And we're basically gonna fold that into our meatballs. So we're going to start off by quickly just chopping these up. So you're looking for a very thin, a very fine kind of chop. So make it as small as you possibly can. And basically, all you need to do is chop, and make sure to keep as much waste as you can to a minimal. And I'll just do the same for about 2 more halved pieces. Simple as that. Right, that should be just about okay now. Alright, so your pan is now nice and hot. All you're left to do now is add just a little bit of olive oil, and then in goes your onions. Right, so easy as that. So basically all you need to do is now sweat those up for a little bit. I'm also going to be using about 3 stalks of spring onion. And with this, I'm just basically going to cut them right in the middle. Just always cut them open just to make sure they're nice and clean. You don't really want to contaminate your family by having a bit of sand or some worms in there. So always just split them halfway to make sure they're clean right to the roots. And basically take this root bit off and just chop them. Right, so all the way to the very end. Don't waste any bit of that onion. Remember, all the flavors are all hidden in that little bit of stalk and the stems. Right, so simple as that, and basically discard the rest. And all you want to do is just keep those nice and dry as you fry them. Remember, I only used a very small amount of oil. All you do now, just finish those off slightly by adding about 2 teaspoons of some minced garlic. And just basically give that a shake. And basically that is now done. So we're just going to keep mixing that while it actually continues to cool off. And all you need now is to grab a bowl and a wooden spoon and basically start by assembling your meatball mixture. So in here I've got about a cup of meat, so about 120 grams. And to that I will crack in just 1 whole egg. Simple as that. Also add to that just a small pinch of salt for seasoning, a bit of also some freshly ground black peppercorns, just for a bit of heat and a bit of kick. And basically give that a quick mix using a wooden spoon or your hands. So what you should actually have is a seemingly wet mixture. Remember, you are going to be adding a few of your dry ingredients in here, which will help you to stabilize the mixture. So you definitely need that bit of liquid right at the beginning. Right, so that once that is cooked and your onions are just slightly cooled off, add that all into the bowl. Simple as that. And all you need to do is just mix that through. And you basically start to get a beautiful onion kind of aroma coming through there. Right, so now you've got your onions nicely mixed up with the meat, which is exactly what you're looking for. And the last bit that is remaining now is just to add a little bit of that breadcrumb and a little bit of flour, and continue to mix until the mixture is almost totally dry. So I always recommend always add little bits at a time, just to make sure you don't add too much. And always also give your bowl a turn and make sure to incorporate all the ingredients on the sides, leaving no waste. And something most people also forget at times is to just scoop even what's on the spoon. Very easy as that. And all you're left to do now is continue to fold in just until your mixture starts to form into a bowl. Mine is a little wet still, so I'm just going to add a small amount of breadcrumbs. I'm just going to keep folding that. And your meatball mixture is now just about ready. So one particular thing I like to do once I'm done making my meatball mixture, I always like to give it just a little bit of time to infuse, which means just cover it with a bit of cling film and basically just allow it maybe anything between an hour to 2 hours. That should actually give you enough time for your meatball mixture to infuse, and you can definitely start frying them immediately. So we're gonna let this mixture just rest on the side here, and we'll come back to it in a little bit. Right. So up next, remember we also have some pasta that will be accompanying this dish, so we're just going to go straight into starting that off. And the particular step you want to start with, as I mentioned, always start with your water. Very crucial that you reheat your water. I'm just going to leave that there and allow it to come to the boil. I'm going to leave my lid also covering the pot, which will just allow it to really heat up a little faster. And in the meantime, we're basically also going to be serving some tomato wedges, which is a very, very simple process. You know, all you need for that is some very beautiful vine ripe tomatoes. And all I'm going to do is cut those into quarters of 4. Move those onto a plate. Do the same for the other piece. Cut them into 4 pieces, 4 quarters, equal quarters. Just press those on a plate, discard the root ends, and all you're left to do is just season with some freshly ground black pepper and a tiny bit of salt. Basically, that will actually also give the tomatoes a nice, beautiful flavor. And remember that the salt as well just allows the tomatoes to really just dry up nice and well on the outside, giving you basically a very, very beautiful condiment to go with your lunch. So with those, you can actually also leave them aside, just let them sit on the side before you pack them. They will actually continue to just absorb that salt slowly. So to the pot here, we've got one big pot going. And this is basically where we'll be cooking our pasta. So very, very simple things needed here. To the pot, we're going to be incorporating to that some salt. And basically allow that to come to the boil. And then the pasta will just go in right after that. So next up, we're going to start heating up some oil as well. And remember, this is basically going to just aid us in cooking our meatballs. So I'm just going to have that going on the side here, but remember to never heat your oil in a covered lid. Remember, condensation happens inside your pot. What happens is steam will build up, and it actually could be very dangerous in your kitchen. So please never reheat any oil in a pot with the lid on. Always leave it open. Remember, there could be a little bit of water in there, and once that falls into the hot oil, it could actually cause a fire. So always reheat your oil uncovered. Right, so into that, we're basically going to be throwing in our meatballs. So I'm just going to grab a plate and a bit of my flour. And I'm just going to dust a little bit of that flour onto the plate. And basically start off with forming our meatballs. So very, very simple. Something I like to use occasionally just to portion out. I like to use an ice cream scoop. This particularly helps me measure out the same size all the time, and it doesn't allow me to actually have a bigger or a smaller piece of varying sizes which don't really show for consistency. So start off by just filling up your ice cream scoop, making sure it's filled up to the very level top, and basically just shake off the excess with your fingers and scoop that onto your plate, and just continue the same process. So always press and make sure to fill it completely, making sure there is no air pockets, and then just use your finger to wipe off the excess. And just continue your the same process for the rest of your meatballs. We'll just continue to do the same for one more piece, and about 4 pieces should actually do. So remember, I'm measuring my meatballs to about 30 grams raw. This should actually cook down to maybe between 22 and 26 grams when they're cooked. So basically 2 or 3 of those should actually sit really well for a baby portion, and about double that for an adult size. Right, so we're just going to clear that for now. And all I'm going to do now is dust my hands slightly and start by rolling my meatballs. So all you're doing now is just giving it a shape, but always remember to compress it just like you do with a burger patty, and then continue to roll that, and basically continue to do the same for the other 3 pieces. Right, my oil is just about hot now. So one thing to always remember, always press your meatballs in, making sure there's no air pockets in there. One particular thing that happens with a meatball that's not rolled really well, it actually cracks open while cooking and absorbs a lot of oil. And remember, what you're looking for is a nice solid golf ball looking kind of meat piece that will basically just sit really well when it goes to the table. So simple as that. Just going to rinse my hands quickly. Right, so meatballs done, ready to go into the oil. Always insist, please don't try and throw them into the oil with your bare hands. If you do have some tongs, make some use of them. We're just going to go in 1 piece at a time. And also another point I could probably share with you, remember the meatballs are made fresh, so they will actually cook faster than meatballs that you made in advance and put in the fridge. So here you're looking about 5 to 6 minutes until they start browning, and you can basically just cook them maybe 1 extra minute and take them out. And remember, this we are going to be finishing off in a sauce much later. So they're now just starting to color up really well. We could give that about another 4 to 5 minutes. And in the meantime, we're basically gonna go in with our pasta. Our water is hot. So all you need to do now is just grab your pasta right in the center of the bowl and just twist and allow them to spread. That allows you to actually make sure they don't actually stick to each other. So meatballs are now nice and golden. Just going to grab a plate to drain them on. Always recommend kitchen towel, kitchen paper. It's a little easier to use on most occasions, and it actually is one of the most cleanest papers you can actually work with, especially in the kitchen. First of all, for the fact that it doesn't release any fiber, so it's actually really good to rest your food on. Right, so just going to come back to our meatballs, and they're now just starting to get a beautiful golden color, if you can be able to see that from the cameras. So basically also another very, very simple technique to be able to check for your doneness of your meatballs. You could always try and squeeze them with your tongs. Remember that the more they cook, the tougher they become. You can alternatively always make an extra piece on the side for you to taste as well. And basically that should allow you to be able to cook your meatballs and get a very, very good consistency out of them. Right, so my pasta is now cooking, so this will probably be about another 6 to 7 minutes. Our meatballs are now nice and golden. So first thing always to remember, turn down your heat and then just start taking them one at a time, and always just place them in the oil in a manner that you will remember which one went in first, so that you don't actually have a case of one that's not really cooked well all through. Okay, so I'm just going to allow those to rest on my kitchen towel, and I'm also going to allow my pasta just to continue cooking. And basically When we do come back, I'll be taking you straight to the process of finishing the meatballs, dressing your pasta, and last but not least, plating, and that will be all for today. So please don't touch that dial. We'll be right back. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. For those of you who were with us just before the break, we were just finishing off our pasta. We do have some meatballs here, which we're also going to finish off in a little bit. But we'll start off by taking our pasta out of the pan. And that is simply just by pouring it through my strainer on the side here. And as I mentioned before, strainers really do come in handy, especially when you're trying to do something as simple as just cooking some pasta and draining it. So I'm just going to shake that off and I'll just return that to the pot. And basically the reason for that, the reason why I'm not cooling my pasta is because I am going to be serving it immediately. So just to keep it from overcooking, I'm also going to and from sticking, I'm also going to incorporate just a bit of olive oil in there. Just mix that quickly in the pan. And your pasta is now ready to serve. But as I mentioned, we are going to finish off our beautiful meatballs, and it's a very, very simple technique. I'm going to be using some homemade bolognese, which we had made a little earlier. And for those of you who are curious to know what went into it, basically, I whole boiled about 6 tomatoes just in salty water, drained the water and blended them up in a blender with a bit of onion and garlic, and basically just put it back on the pot, added a bit of stock and cooked it down slowly for about an hour to an hour and a half. And what you get is a beautiful thick tomato consistency, something very similar to what a tomato paste would look like. So very simply, I'm just going to scoop about 2 ladlefuls into my pan. And to that, I'm just going to bring up the flavors with just a bit of black pepper, just to give it a bit of a kick. And last but not least, go in with the meatballs. And this is basically to allow you to get them nicely coated and nice and juicy. Something that you should be able to actually have as a lunch really easily. So all you're left to do now is just continue to toss your meatballs in that beautiful sauce. Remember, it's on low heat. All you need to do now is just, first of all you need to do is heat up your sauce. Your meatballs are already cooked, so you only just need to coat them on the outside. And basically just allow them to sit in that sauce for just a little while, just until the sauce starts to get a little too thick, but not very thick. And those should now be ready to serve. So while we reheat that, we're just going to start off by plating. And as I mentioned, we are working on some budget, convenient and healthy meals for you and your family to be able to carry for lunch. It's the reason why we have these small, beautiful containers on stage today. And basically the reason for this is lock and lock containers come very handy. They come with the compartments already portioned out for you. It allows you to actually pack at least 4 items in one container, and basically that just substitutes a very, very simple lunch. So this particular size would be an example I would use for babies or a child's portion, maybe for children under 7 years. But if you're looking for someone any older than that to maybe an adult portion, this should actually be a very, very good size for that. So we're just going to slide those inserts out and we're going to go straight into plating. So as I mentioned, pasta is a very light accompaniment to most meals and basically just requires you to give just a little bit extra. So we're going to start off by plating our pasta into the first insert. And basically all you want to do is just put enough to make sure it gets to the very top. But try not to overfill it, because it will actually give you a bit of an issue trying to close your container and actually trying to put the lid on it as well. So simple as that. Just make sure you don't have any pasta sticking out on the sides as well. And basically that's as simple as that. And now to the other set that we had. Remember, we also have a compartment that you can actually separate the meat from the condiments. And basically to that I would add my tomatoes right at the very end. Just like that, about 4 pieces should do. And then just finish off with my meatballs. So I'm just going to turn that down completely. And I'll just start by just dishing those into my container. And last but not least, just about fill it up with just about halfway sauce. That should actually allow for you to have some sauce to go with it. And it will also prevent the sauce from spilling over in case you actually have a little too much inside. So ladies and gentlemen, simple as that. A very, very easy spaghetti and meatballs dish that I know most of you now can be able to recreate in your very own kitchens. And it has been a pleasure showing you this, so I hope you do have something that you've learned today that you can actually bring to your own very own kitchen at home. Thank you for watching. Thank you very much for tuning in today. My name is Chef Andy. You have been watching Lunch Guide on BrandPlus TV. And until the next episode, where we continue to bring some easy to make, budget friendly and nutritious meals, it has been a pleasure being with you today. Have a lovely evening, have a lovely year, and see you soon.